Hi, my name is Star, and it's been a while. I haven't been on here for over a year. I'm sorry, but I finally have my own room. I am finally in a position where I have an altar and all my witchcraft stuff, and I can finally come back. Today I'm going to talk about altars because I have only just built my very first one. I'm going to talk to you about what an altar is and how to create your own, as well as giving you a little tour of my own. So an altar is a space dedicated to your practice. If you are a Wiccan, it might also be a place that is dedicated to your deities, but in witchcraft, it's normally a place that you practice your spells and you do your witchcraft. That's not to say you can't do witchcraft anywhere else, but it's normally your dedicated space, and it's normally a place that you can focus, where you can keep all of your tools and your important things that you use all the time. Some people will tell you that there's a certain way to do your altar. For example, they might say that you need to do it in the directions of the elements, or they might need to have certain items on your altar, but quite frankly, that's not true at all. People do like to do altars in specific ways, and that is completely fine if that resonates with you. However, I don't choose to do it that way, and a lot of people don't choose to do it that way. As long as your altar is a space where you feel comfortable doing your witchcraft and doing your practice, then it doesn't really matter how you do it. One thing a lot of people have on their altars that I actually do not have on mine is a cloth. Lots of people use cloths on their altar. Often colour correspondences are used for these cloths. For example, my mum, her altar is in the room right next to mine, and on her altar she personally chooses to change the colour of her cloth based on what chakra she is trying to work on. So that's one way you can do it. And for example, white is like cleansing, clearing energy, or purple is a colour of spirituality, the third eye, psychic abilities. Like whatever it is you're trying to work on, you might want to use a cloth for that. Some people also just use cloths from Etsy or personalised like witchy cloths, which is completely fine. Some people just use tablecloths or plain fabric. My mum, she just uses fabric, like velvet fabric. Whatever you want to do is absolutely fine. Or you could be like me and have no cloth at all. If you're a Wiccan like me, on your altars, people often have something to represent the god and the goddess. So for me, that's little kind of figurines. For example, this is what I use to represent the goddess. Sometimes I will put candles out, but I also just have like little things to represent. I want to find something else, but for now this is what I'm using for the god. Some people like to use candles. Normally they will be either black and white or silver and gold, but you can represent them in literally any way you like. Another thing a lot of people have on their altar is either a book of shadows or a grimoire, which I have. This is what I write all of my spells in. I personally only have one, and that is just for me to record all of my spells. So eventually, when I need to, I can open it up and look back at all the spells I've done. And it helps me to write new spells personally, but this is something I will always keep on my altar. Again, totally whatever your preference is, but for me, I absolutely must have this on my altar. Then there's the question of what to actually use for an altar. Again, anything. My mum, she uses a storage box that she covers in cloth and uses as her altar, because then it doubles as storage. I have this kind of big, I'll show you in a minute, but I have like a big piece of furniture with drawers, because honestly, I think storage is really great for an altar, or to have somewhere underneath. I personally would recommend, if you don't have anything underneath, to even have some little baskets or something you can put underneath the table, if that's what you choose to use. Basically, if you have any sort of space under your altar, use it, because if you have a cloth over it, no one's going to see it, and you can hide all of your little witchy things under there. Not everything on your altar has to be about witchcraft. Some things can just be very personal to you. For example, you might want certain photos or something that's really sentimental to you. Even though it is a place to practice, anything that you can draw personal power from or emotion from can go on your altar. It doesn't have to be this perfect thing, because it's not. It is personal to everybody. Everyone's altar is going to be different. Tools normally correspond with some sort of element. For example, a wand would correspond to air, and a chalice might correspond to water. Some people like to split their altar into sections. I don't personally do this, and it's not something I'm interested in doing. And some things are a little confusing, because this is my incense holder. Now, some might say that incense is air and some might say it's fire. Personally, I would say it corresponds to air, but in certain diagrams you might find that incense goes in more than one category. And again, that is completely up to you. Personally, I put things wherever I see fit. I don't have a specific way I've organised it. Technically, I do have a couple little sections, but it's just however I thought looked and felt right. It doesn't have to be a specific way, and mine is most definitely not. So now I'm going to give you a little tour of my altar and continue to talk about things to hopefully give you a bit of an idea of how you might want to set yours up, or even to give you an idea of how you don't. So this is what the top of my altar looks like, the main part of my altar. As you can see, I do have a group of my divination bits. I have my tarot cards, which are a very basic set, but they are so good. I also have my pendulum. It's something I haven't used too much, but I keep it there because I do love it, as well as my runes. Then I also have this labradorite crystal ball, which I have tried to put in front of the light just to show you how nice it is. I really love labradorite, and it's something that I need to use more. I mentioned this earlier, so I'm only briefly going to go over it, but I do have my little figurines and symbols of deities I've worked with. Then in the centre of my altar, I do have a little selenite bowl in which I keep crystals that I use often. So for example, I do have amethyst and rose quartz. I also have labradorite, one of my absolute favourites. I have tiger's eye, something I use a lot in spell work. I then also have some clear quartz, as it just has so many different uses. And then I have some citrine. I keep all of these in a selenite bowl just because it means I don't have to charge them individually, as selenite is a crystal that charges other crystals and your own energy. In the centre of my altar, I have this little ceramic square that my mum made me that normally I'll put oil burners or wax burners on top, as I really love burning scents. At the back of my altar, I have a mortar and pestle, which I brought from a crystal shop a few hours away from me. I absolutely love it, and I use it in a lot of spell work, which is why I have it on my altar, though not everyone would choose to have it on there. At the front of my altar, I have this tiny little cauldron that I absolutely love. It was found in my great aunt's home recently after she passed, and it's a reminder of her, but I also use it in a lot of spell work and whenever I need to burn anything. Lots of people choose to have them on their altars, and I chose to have one on mine personally. I also have this little knife that my parents brought for me when they were in Scotland, I believe, and I absolutely love it. Not everyone would have a knife on their altar, but I do. I think it's very handy whenever I need to cut anything, as I would never use like an athame or anything like that to cut. So for me, this is just a really helpful little tool. I also have a selenite wand on my altar. Lots of people have wands on their altars, normally for casting circles or directing energy.
I personally choose selenite because it's a cleansing crystal. I can use it to cleanse my space, to cleanse my own energy, and I just personally like selenite, although mine is getting a bit battered now. And then I do also have a lovely little incense burner. It's quite self-explanatory, but I just use it when I want to burn some incense for specific spell work purposes, or if I'm trying to cleanse my space. They're just useful to have, I find. And then next to my incense burner, I also have an athame, however you'd like to pronounce it. This was just a gift from my partner, and it is a bit different to other ones just because mine is sharp. I don't use it for cutting purposes, and as you can see, mine needs cleaning very badly and oiling, but not all of them, not all athames need this much care. Something else that you'll see on a lot of altars is some form of cleansing tool. So I have Palo Santo and some old white sage that I have yet to finish. Normally Palo Santo is now my go-to, but I still have some sage, so I'm going to use it. Underneath my altar I have space, which I love. I have 2 drawers and a section where I normally keep bigger items or items I use most frequently. I also have this from when I had my aura photographed, which I went to a little spiritual fair for. It's the first one I've ever had, but it was quite fun, and it's just got all the little meanings on the back. Underneath my altar I also have a little moon calendar, as I often lose track, and it just makes it a lot easier, and it gives me all the information about kind of the planets, the moon each month, and it just makes tracking it and doing my spell work a lot easier. I also keep a little wand under there. This is one that my father made for me many years ago. He's a very skilled woodworker and he's improved a lot since, but I absolutely treasure this thing. Whilst I keep my main tarot card deck on my altar, underneath my altar I also have one other tarot card deck as well as an oracle card deck. I really love them. The Witch's Wisdom Tarot is just a really nice deck, I find. I really like the artwork, but I do like my little oracle cards as well. So if we look in the first drawer under my altar, you'll see a good lot of things. One being all of the bags, different colours that I use for my spell work. You will also see an abundance of herbs. I have far too many in here, really. I also keep these little tincture bells in my drawers. These are just another tool that I use for cleansing purposes. And then lined up on one side, I have all of my essential oils as well. In the drawer on the right, that's where I keep a lot of my kind of candles, incense cones, as well as my candle holders. So as you can see, I've got lots of multicolored candles, all different shapes and sizes. I have these really cute heart-shaped tea light holders, although my tea lights are kept in the little space between my altar and the drawers, as well as these candle holders that really need a clean. Then in these small bottles I have some pre-mixed herbs that I've made. For me personally, I just like to keep my altar kind of clean on the top and it's kind of a clutter at the bottom. My drawers are somewhat organised even though there are a lot of things in there. This is more my mess pile. I'll probably clean it up a little bit so that it doesn't look quite so disastrous in my next one, but it's alright. I like to keep, personally, a space here because that's where I can put my spells and things. Like, I like to have things right at the front in the middle of my altar. It gives me space to work. This can be moved. Like, this is only gonna be needed when I have oil burners or wax burners. This is absolutely fine to take off and it gives me all the space I need to do a spell or some workings, because generally I don't normally do big spells. My spells are normally quite small and concentrated. My altar is a fairly decent size. It's bigger than my arm by a fair bit and it gives me a lot of room to work, but not everybody needs that space. Not everybody really needs that much at all to put on their altar. Some people just simply want a space where they can do their spells.
and that is entirely fine. Another thing you might want that I don't have currently is seasonal items. For example, if it's, say it's coming up to Yule, you might want pine cones or different winter things. Like, you can go outside and grab things and put them on your altar. For example, let's say you wanted something to represent air. You could go outside and search for feathers and put those on your altar. Like, you can literally put anything on your altar, anything you like. I often do have seasonal things, but I have just taken them all off not long ago, so now it's quite clean. But this is quite new. I took all of my seasonal stuff off of my old, like, temporary altar so that I could have a really clean space. But at some point you might see that change. I've said it a lot in this video, but altars are normally very personal. They are normally something that you keep to yourself in some way or another. For me, I do not mind showing my altar. Like, I do not mind at all people seeing my altar, but I don't personally like people touching my altar or touching any of my witchy things. Same goes for a lot of witches I know. Some don't even like to show people their altar, and that is completely fine. People do not have a right to touch, and they do not have a right to see things on your altar, especially things like your Book of Shadows or your grimoire. They're all things that are personal to you, personal to your growth and your experience and the knowledge that you have built. Also, if you have any ideas of anything you want to see, anything you want to know about, please let me know, because I'm pretty much happy to make videos on anything. I've honestly really missed making these videos, and I'm so glad to be back on top of it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, since I haven't been here for a year. But I promise I will start uploading, because I finally have the space and the freedom to record videos. And I'll see you in the next one.